Okay, so you guys sent in some really interesting stuff about XFLEET. And today, we're going to try to break down, really what it can do for you, whether you're the person running the show or the one actually driving.
Exactly.
Think of this like a crash course in XFLEET.
Right.
So we're going to be looking at getting started.
Yeah.
How do you get set up? What about managing the vehicles themselves?
Right.
How does the whole ride tracking and logbook thing work?
Yeah.
Reservations, and then, of course, the mobile app.
Right.
By the end of this, you should be pretty comfortable with how to use this thing and really get the most out of it.
Yeah, and we actually have both the setup guide for administrators and the driver's manual.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we're going to see how XFLEET works from, well, both sides.
Awesome. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. Getting started.
Sounds good.
How do you even get into the system?
Well, first things first, right?
Yeah.
The administrator's guide actually talks about the very first step for any user. It's account activation.
Right.
And this is all kicked off with an email that says, X Martin, create an account.
Okay.
Now, this email is sent out automatically after the administrator, the person setting things up,
Yeah.
creates that initial profile in the system.
Makes sense. So once you've done that first time setup, how do you actually get in after that?
So it's super easy from there.
Okay.
You just go to fleet.xmartin.com.
Got it.
You pop in your login details, which is usually the email you used when you activated your account.
Right.
And, well, you just click login.
Easy enough. So now for those of you who are the administrators,
Yeah.
how do you add people to the system?
So the admin manual actually goes into this
Okay.
under user settings.
Got it.
So you head to settings, then you pick users, and you'll see this button that says add.
Okay.
You click on that, and up pops a form where you put in the new user's name.
Right.
This is like their display name in the system,
Yeah.
and their login email. And once you've got that saved, that same XMartin create an account email
Right.
gets zapped off to them so they can set their password.
Perfect. Now, what about managing the people who are already in the system? Can you, as an administrator, change their settings or what they can and can't do?
Oh, for sure. So if you pick a user from that list in settings users, you can go in and tweak their individual settings.
Got it.
And this is where permissions, or what they call roles, come into play.
Oh, interesting.
Like, different keys to a building.
Like,
They control which parts of the system each user can actually get into and what they can do once they're there.
so different roles give you different access.
Exactly. And the manual actually talks about group administrators specifically.
Oh, okay.
Now, they're different from company administrators who usually have complete access to everything.
Right.
Vehicles, users, a whole shebang.
Yeah.
But group administrators, you can actually restrict them to just specific groups of vehicles and users.
That makes sense.
So it's great for big fleets. Say you've got, one group administrator who's only responsible for a certain department's vehicles and drivers.
Right.
Keeps things nice and organized.
Absolutely. And I see the guide also mentioned something about assigning or permanently sharing vehicles with users.
Oh, yeah, that's really handy.
So what's the advantage there?
Well, if you've got a user who basically always uses the same vehicle,
All right.
it's their dedicated ride,
Right.
then in their user settings, administrators can actually tag certain vehicles as assigned and permanently shared.
Got it.
And what that does is it gives that user constant access to those vehicles.
Okay.
Not just through the website, but also importantly on the mobile app.
So it's always there for them.
Exactly. And if
Yeah.
the vehicle has what they call an XMartin exclusive unit,
What's that?
it's like their hardware that you put in the vehicle.
Okay.
It gives you all these cool features like remote locking and unlocking.
Oh, me.
Permanent sharing basically extends control over all of that to the user through the app.
So it's almost like saying, this is your car digitally.
Pretty much, yeah.
How is that different from just booking a vehicle when you need one?
Right, so that's the key difference.
Okay.
The manual actually talks about permanent access versus temporary access,
Okay.
which is handled by the vehicle reservation system.
Got it.
So permanent sharing is for those who have a regular assigned vehicle,
Right.
whereas reservations are for, when you need a vehicle just once in a while.
Makes sense. So how do you control which vehicles a user can reserve?
So there's a setting called parking spaces offered in reservations.
Okay.
And this lets administrators restrict which vehicles a user can book.
Right. So you could say only certain people can reserve certain types of vehicles?
Exactly. Or vehicles at specific locations. It just gives you that extra layer of control.
Great. So that covers getting the users all set up.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the vehicles themselves.
Okay.
Where do you manage all their settings?
So you go to the main settings tab, And then there's a whole section just for vehicles.
Headers.
And that's where you input all the important registration info for every vehicle in the fleet.
Okay.
Now, what's interesting is, just like with user settings,
Yeah.
you can actually handle the assignment and permanent sharing of vehicles right from this screen.
Oh, convenient.
So you're looking at a specific vehicle, you can directly link it to a user.
Makes sense. And just to be clear, doing it from the vehicle settings has the same effect, right?
Yep, same access to the portal, mobile app, the whole 9 yards.
Got it. Now, what about fuel cards? How does the system handle those?
Oh, the fuel card integration is really clever.
Okay.
It can automatically figure out which fuel purchases go with which vehicle.
How does it do that?
As long as the vehicle's registration plate number is on the fuel card transaction,
Right.
when they import that purchase data into Martin Fleet,
Yeah.
the system actually looks for a match based on the registration plate.
That's smart.
And it's even designed to be a bit forgiving,
Hmm.
Like, if there's a space or a hyphen in the plate number, it can still usually figure it out.
Oh, that's helpful.
This whole automation thing makes tracking fuel costs for each vehicle way easier.
Yeah, it makes sense. What about this combined consumption according to TP? What is that all about?
So that combined consumption according to TP, and you're right, TP probably means the Fahrzeugschein or vehicle registration document.
Right.
It's essentially the official fuel consumption figure, like what the manufacturer says that car should get.
Okay.
And Martin Fleet uses this as like a benchmark in their reports.
Okay.
So they compare the actual fuel consumption to this official figure.
I see.
And that way you can spot any potential fuel inefficiencies.
Interesting.
Plus, if the vehicle can, send live fuel level data,
Yeah.
it uses that combined consumption figure to estimate the car's current range.
Oh, that's handy.
So it's useful for, analyzing performance, but also giving drivers real-time info.
Right. And that kind of comparison could even flag vehicles that might need a tune-up or point out if a driver's habits are affecting their mileage.
Yeah, it's more than just about tracking costs.
Absolutely. So it's helpful on multiple levels.
Okay, so let's shift gears now.
Okay.
Let's talk about how the system organizes and tracks individual trips. Specifically, the ride settings and the logbook. It seems like there's some cool automation here, too.
Yeah, under ride settings in the logbook section, administrators can actually set up automatic creation of private trips based on a schedule.
Okay.
Now, what's really important here is that these settings are like individualized
Right.
for each driver and each specific vehicle they're assigned to.
Got it.
So let's say a driver always uses their assigned vehicle for their commute at the same time every day.
Yeah.
You can set it up to automatically log those trips as private.
Makes sense that the drivers have some control over this too, right?
Oh, absolutely. If a driver has a permanently assigned vehicle,
Okay.
they can actually go in and tweak those automatic private trip settings themselves to match how they actually use the vehicle.
Makes sense.
And the driver's manual actually highlights how easy it is for drivers to switch between business and private trips,
Okay.
right in the XFLEET by X Martin mobile app.
Got it.
And depending on the car, there might even be a physical switch inside
Oh, wow.
to make that change quickly.
That's convenient.
Yeah, it gives the drivers a lot of flexibility to categorize their trips accurately.
So who can actually see the details of these different trip types?
They've really thought about privacy with this.
Okay.
If a trip is marked as private,
Yeah.
only the driver for that specific trip can see the details.
Got it. So it protects personal travel information.
Right, now what about the logbook tab itself? Like, from the driver's point of view, what do they see there?
So the driver's guide explains that in the logbook tab,
Okay,
the driver can see a record of all the trips
okay,
for the vehicles they have access to.
makes sense.
And they can filter it down,
Right,
to look at specific vehicles or choose a particular month to review so they can easily keep track of their mileage and stuff.
exactly. Now, the guide also mentions automatic ride merging.
Oh, yeah. How does that work?
So to keep the logbook neat and tidy,
Okay.
the system can actually merge multiple short trips into one entry
Interesting.
if the stops between them are less than an hour.
Okay.
And the merged entry will usually say how long the break was.
Right.
This way the logbook doesn't get filled up with, like, tiny stops.
Yeah, like running quick errands between appointments.
Exactly. It helps make the reporting more accurate, and it's less work for everyone.
That's smart. What if a driver has a longer stop, though?
Mhm.
Like for lunch, and they want to merge the trips before and after?
Oh, yeah. They can totally do that manually.
Okay, how does that work?
So they just select the rides they want to combine.
Okay.
They can use those, keyboard shortcuts like holding Shift or CTRL
Right.
to pick multiple entries. and then they use the merge function.
Got it.
It's usually either in the toolbar at the top, or you can right-click to find it.
Handy.
This gives drivers control over how their trips are logged, especially if it's like a multi-part journey.
So what if they merge rides by mistake? Can they undo that?
Oh, for sure. There's a split function for that.
Oh, okay.
They select the merged ride, choose split,
Yeah.
and then they just click on the spot in the timeline where they want to divide it.
Makes sense. So it's easy to fix any accidental merging.
Exactly. Now, what about changing the details of a trip?
Mm-hmm.
Like the purpose or who the driver was?
Right.
Drivers can actually edit those things too.
Yep.
They select the ride, hit edit,
Yeah.
and then a box pops up where they can change stuff like the purpose of the trip
Okay.
or the driver if they have permission.
Right.
And they can switch between business and private.
Got it.
But remember, only the driver who did a private ride can edit its details.
Right. To protect their privacy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the driver's guide also talks about adding purchase information to the logbook.
Okay. Where does that fit in?
So in the trip log tab,
Yeah.
there's this button that says purchases and charging.
Got it.
And when you click that, you can manually put in details about any trip-related expenses,
Okay.
like if you have a receipt for parking or tolls.
Right.
Now, if the system already picked up a fueling event from the fuel card,
Mm-hmm.
you can use the edit function here too
Okay.
to add more info from the fuel receipt.
Like the exact amount or the odometer reading.
Exactly. It keeps all your cost information in one place.
So it's like a one-stop shop for all the trip expenses.
Pretty much. Now, what about making sure the mileage and fuel levels are correct?
Right. Because sometimes things might not be automatic.
The guide mentioned something called odometer and fuel correction.
Yeah. So if a vehicle doesn't send that data automatically,
Oh.
or if something seems off,
Yeah.
drivers can actually put in corrections manually.
Okay.
So usually they'd note the odometer reading and the fuel level at the end of each month.
Got it.
And they do this through the odometer and fuel correction button in the trip log.
Now, when a driver adds a correction,
Yeah.
the system figures out the distance they drove since the last reading,
Right.
and then it adjusts the mileage for all those trips accordingly.
Makes sense.
Now, there's usually a limit on how big these corrections can be,
Okay.
usually around 10% of the total distance.
Right. Just to prevent big mistakes.
Exactly. It's a safety net.
Now, for the logbook, what if you need to, like, get this information out of the system for reports or something?
They've got you covered there.
Okay.
You can both print and export the logbook.
Got it.
There are buttons for both, clearly labeled.
Handy.
But the important thing to remember,
Yeah.
whether you print it or export it,
Mm-hmm.
any details about private trips are hidden.
Right. To protect the driver's info.
Exactly. So now that we've covered the logbook stuff,
Yeah.
let's move on to how XFLEET handles vehicle access through its vehicle reservations system.
Okay. Sounds good.
So how do you make a vehicle reservable in the first place?
So as an administrator, you go to settings, then the vehicle section, pick the vehicle you want, and then go into advanced settings.
Okay.
And there's a little checkbox that says offer for reservations.
Got it.
You just check that box and boom, that vehicle is up for grabs.
Easy peasy. Now, the vehicle's location matters too, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's really important to set the car park for each reservable vehicle.
Okay, what does that mean?
You basically link the vehicle to one of your own locations
Right.
that you've already set up on the system's map.
So those own locations are like your company's parking lots or depots.
Exactly.
Okay, so you're telling the system where the vehicle usually lives.
Exactly. That way, users can easily find and reserve the most convenient option.
Now, we talked about this a bit before with user settings.
Yeah.
But it's worth repeating how you control who can reserve which vehicles or parking spots.
Right, because there are different levels of access.
So in settings,
Yeah.
under users,
Yeah.
there's a setting called parking lots offered in reservations.
Okay. And this lets administrators get really specific.
How so?
They can actually limit a user to only reserving vehicles in certain parking lots,
Right,
or even completely block a user from making any reservations at all.
if needed. Okay.
Yeah, it's all about having that fine-grained control.
The guide also mentioned something about creating multiple parking lots at the same address.
Oh, yeah.
What's the point of that?
So let's say you've got a huge parking garage
Correct.
with, different sections,
Yeah,
or maybe multiple buildings at the same site.
right.
You can actually define each of those as a separate parking lot in the system.
Oh, I see.
This makes it way easier for users to find the exact type of vehicle they need,
Got it.
maybe one in a specific section that's closer to them.
Right, it's like organizing your parking lot digitally.
Exactly.
So what about actually checking to see if a vehicle's available?
So the system has a nice calendar view.
Okay.
It shows you the availability of all the reservable vehicles.
Got it.
Now, important thing to note, the details about a specific reservation.
Like who booked it?
Exactly. That's usually only visible to the driver who made the booking.
Right.
And anyone else who needs to approve it.
Okay.
So for everyone else,
Yeah.
they'll just see that the vehicle's booked during that time.
Makes sense. Now, what happens when someone actually goes to make a reservation?
So when a user fills out that create vehicle reservation form,
Yeah.
they put in the dates and times.
The system is smart enough to only show them vehicles that are actually free then. Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, no more trying to book a car that's already taken.
Now, often you need someone to approve a reservation before it's final.
Right.
So how does that whole approval thing work in XFLEET?
So by default, in settings company reservations, they usually require reservations to be approved.
Got it.
But you can also set up some reservations to be automatically approved.
Oh.
Now, if you do need approval,
Yeah.
they give you a lot of choices for who the approver can be. Usually, it's the driver's direct supervisor.
Right.
Or in bigger companies, maybe the supervisor of their representative supervisor.
Yeah.
And of course, group and company administrators can approve things too.
So there's flexibility there.
Exactly. Now, how does the approver know they need to do something?
Well, when a reservation needs approval,
Yeah.
the approver gets an email
Okay.
letting them know and asking them to approve or reject it.
Got it.
They also get a notification right on the XFLEET mobile app.
If they have it?
Exactly. And importantly,
Yeah.
both the driver and the approver get updates
Okay.
if anything changes with the reservation.
So everyone's in the loop.
Precisely. Now, what if an approver needs to change something on a reservation request?
So any of the approvers can approve a reservation or make changes to it
Okay.
at any point before it's actually done.
Got it.
But the driver who made the reservation,
Yeah.
they can only edit things before it's approved.
Okay.
Once it's approved, if they need to change something,
Yeah.
they usually have to cancel it and make a new one.
Makes sense. So once a reservation is all approved, how does the driver actually get the car?
Typically, they make the vehicle available about 30 minutes before the reservation starts.
Oh, okay.
And they can actually adjust this time window in the company settings.
Got it.
The driver will also get a notification on their mobile app.
Letting them know it's ready.
Exactly. Now, what happens if a driver is late returning the vehicle?
Right. Does the system handle that?
Yeah, they've built in an automatic termination process.
Okay.
So if the car is parked, locked, and the ignition's been off
Yeah.
for at least 10 minutes after the reservation ends,
Okay.
the system automatically marks it as done.
Got it.
Also, if a vehicle's just sitting in its last parking spot
Yeah.
and it hasn't communicated with the system for, say, 70 minutes,
Which could happen if you're underground with bad signal.
exactly, they'll terminate the reservation automatically.
Makes sense.
Now, important thing to note, it doesn't physically stop a driver from keeping the vehicle longer,
Right.
and it doesn't, magically take back the keys if they're just late.
Got it.
There's usually a maximum extension time,
Okay.
which is set by the company,
What's the usual default?
usually around 24 hours,
Okay.
but an administrator can also manually end a reservation anytime.
Right. Okay. So that covers reservations on the web portal.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about the XFLEET mobile app
Okay.
and how it gives drivers all this functionality on the go.
Sounds good.
So first things first, how do you even start using the app?
It's just like the web portal.
Okay.
First step is logging in,
Right.
and you use the exact same login details,
Got it.
email address and password.
Makes sense.
Now, if a driver hasn't been set up yet by an administrator,
Yeah.
they'll have to wait for that initial setup.
Right.
Then they'll get that XMartin create an account email to set their password.
So once they're in, how do they make a new reservation right from the app?
So there's usually a main menu or some icons,
Okay.
and one of them will take them to the reservations section.
Got it.
And there they'll see a list of their upcoming or past reservations.
Okay.
To make a new one,
Yeah.
they just tap the button that says New Reservation,
Right. Good.
which is usually at the bottom of the screen.
Easy enough. Now, what about actually picking up a reserved vehicle using the app?
So when it's time to pick up the car,
Yeah.
the driver goes back to reservations in the app,
Okay.
selects their booking.
Got it.
And if the company has a pre-rental vehicle check set up,
Yeah.
they'll see a button that says Vehicle Check.
Okay.
And before they even start the check,
Yeah.
they can usually unlock the car right through the app.
Oh, convenient.
So they can check out the interior.
Makes sense. Now what's involved in the actual check?
So they go through a checklist,
Okay.
confirming the condition of different parts of the vehicle.
Right.
And if they see any damage that's not already noted,
Yeah.
they can report it right there in the app. Sometimes they can even take a photo.
Oh, that's handy.
Once they're done with the inspection, they
Yeah.
pick up the vehicle or something like that
Okay.
to officially start their reservation.
So once they've got the car and they're driving, what kind of information and control does the app give them?
So there's this vehicle overview screen.
Okay.
It gives the driver a snapshot of the car's current status.
Like what?
Fuel level, current location, any alerts.
Got it.
And for vehicles with that X-Martin exclusive unit.
Right. The in-car hardware.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The app actually lets them control stuff remotely.
Oh, cool.
So they can lock or unlock the doors,
Okay.
even preheat or pre-cool the car.
Wow, that's fancy.
It depends on what the car can do.
Right.
But one really cool thing
Yeah.
is that once they unlock the car with the app,
Mm-hmm.
the engine start function is automatically enabled through Bluetooth.
Oh, wow, that's convenient.
Yeah, as long as their phone's connected to the car.
Now, what if they spot a problem with the car while they're driving?
So they can report a defect or damage at any time.
Okay.
Usually, they find the three-dot menu icon for their vehicle in the app.
Yeah.
And they pick defects and damages.
Got it.
Then they choose Report New and describe the problem.
Okay, so they can flag any issues right away?
Exactly.
What about when it's time to return the car?
So they park it in the right spot,
Yeah.
make sure it's all locked up tight.
Mm-hmm.
Then they tap that three-dot icon again
Okay.
and choose Vehicle Return.
Got it.
And just like at pickup, they might have to do a quick inspection.
To note any new damage.
Exactly. Now, can drivers see their past trips in the app?
Oh, yeah, there's usually a whole ride history section.
Oh, okay.
Usually it's one of the main tabs at the bottom,
Got it.
and it shows their most recent trips first,
Okay.
but they can use a calendar icon or something similar
Right.
to pick and view trips from, past days, weeks, even months.
So they can look back at their history.
Exactly. And for each trip,
Yeah.
they can often see the route on a map.
Oh, that's cool.
And if they tap on a specific ride,
Yeah.
they can get all sorts of details.
Like what?
Like any breaks they took, their speed during the trip,
Okay.
even stuff about their driving style, if that's turned on.
Interesting. The guide also mentioned something about vehicle security settings in the app.
Oh, yeah. So if they go to that three-dot icon
Mm-hmm.
and choose vehicle security,
Yeah.
they can usually control various security settings for the vehicle.
Okay.
What they can actually do depends on the X-Martin unit that's installed.
Right.
But they might be able to control the locks or activate anti-theft features.
So all about keeping the vehicle safe.
Exactly. Now, finally, what about technical support stuff?
Right. If they need help.
There's usually a technical information section in the app.
Okay.
It tells you things like which operating systems the app works on.
Okay.
Right now, it's Android 5 and up and iOS 12 and up.
Got it.
And importantly, it also has contact info for tech support.
Oh, that's crucial.
They give you phone numbers for Czech and Slovak support,
Right.
and a general support email address.
So they've got all the bases covered.
Exactly. So drivers can easily get help if they need it.
Wow. We really went deep on X-Martin Fleet today.
Too.
Covered a ton of ground.
Yeah.
From logging in and setting up users to managing vehicles, tracking rides,
Right.
the whole reservation system,
Yeah.
and all the stuff the mobile app can do. It's quite the system.
It seems really powerful for managing a fleet.
Definitely. So for you listening,
Yeah.
you should have a really good grasp now
Hopefully.
of what X-Martin Fleet can do
Mhm.
and how it can help you streamline fleet management.
From all angles.
Exactly. Now, this brings up a really interesting question for you to think about.
Okay.
How could a system like X-Martin Fleet actually change the way your organization handles its vehicles?
It's a good question.
Think about all the features that we talked about,
Right.
like the automatic trip logging,